Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. I'm Darren Saul, your host. Brand new month, brand new financial year. I wish everybody the absolute best of success. And I have a lovely show today, a really interesting show with a fantastic guest by the name of Angela Heise. How you doing, Angela?
Hi, Darren. Very well. Thank you.
Very well. And we're going to be chatting all about overcoming your fear of social media. So this is a topic that I've been fascinated with of late, and I've been thinking about this a lot because I know that there's a lot of people out there that really want to get straight into social media. They want to dive in, but something's holding them back. And we're going to be chatting about that with Angela. But before we do, I just want to give everybody a little bit of insight into who Angela is. So Angela is a leadership coach and emotional intelligence trainer who has been working with people for almost 25 years. Before she worked with others, she spent almost 20 years working on herself. Angela is dedicated to understanding the why behind human behavior to then be able to help people improve their work, life, and relationships by better understanding themselves and others. And I just love that, Angela, because, you know, for me, everything's about human behavior, understanding, self-awareness, continual growth. So, you know, everything's based on that. And I think it's going to be a really fascinating conversation. So welcome, Angela Heise.
Thank you, Darren.
Fantastic. So Angela, tell us a little bit about you that I might not have covered.
Well, my mother used to joke that I was born with itchy feet. I have lived in 9 countries so far.
My Lord.
And I hope there are going to be a few more. I mean, not permanently, but at least for a while. I went to Peru a few years ago, just on holidays, and ended up staying a total of 9 months, which was really fun. So I love traveling.
Yeah.
And I love trying different things.
Yep.
So I'm one of those pioneers. I'd like, give me some new food, go into a restaurant and say, that looks interesting what this person has on their plate. What is that? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'll try that.
You're the person that says, when the chef comes and says, I've got a special, this, and this, everybody else says, oh no, you say, yes, I'll have that one.
Yes. Yeah. And I always make sure, I mean, I've got, of course, when I go to a restaurant, there are certain dishes that I really like, yep. But I also make sure that I try new ones and give new flavors a chance because, we get so limited. And that's one of the reasons why, again, since we're on topic, if you stay in your comfort zone, then, stepping out of that becomes really scary. Yeah. And so I do something every year that takes me out of my comfort zone.
Fantastic.
I've done all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Improv theater.
Right.
When we talk more about stage fright and all of that, I used to be petrified of showing up.
Wow.
And improv theater pushed me so far out of my comfort zone that when I was on my way to the second session in my car when I realized that I had completely unconsciously done a U-turn and I was on my way back home again.
Look at that. Look how powerful that is.
Absolutely.
The power of the subconscious mind.
Yeah. But once I overcame that, I had a ball.
Is that what you chose to do this year? Was that your this year's exercise?
No, this year is going to be something completely different. I know this sounds ridiculous. I started a vegetable garden.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you, I came to a point where I said, I'd rather stand in front of 500 people and give a presentation than plant cauliflower because I'm going to kill it. It's not going to survive.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even keep a basil plant alive on my windowsill.
Well, I'll be pleased to say, I'm happy to say that I've harvested my first salads.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, when it comes to pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, I'm great with a lot of those things. But when it comes to food, I'm a disaster. I can eat the same thing at the same place at the same time every week for 10 years.
I can't do that. I love cooking. And if I eat the same dish twice, yes. 3 times, no.
Out you go.
I just can't do it. I love change.
Fantastic. I mean, it's a great way to start our conversation because, I've been watching a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people being in the social media arena, and I can see I watch behavior like you do, and I watch what people do on social media. And I can sometimes sense a little bit of timidness in what they do, or when they talk to people, they also they show me that they're just not really committed. They're scared. They're not, they can't go all in. So a lot of people really want to engage with social media. They want to get serious, but something's holding them back. So what's your take on that? What is it? What is it that's going on?
One word: judgment.
Right. Yep.
I mean, I can judge myself two ways. I can have really harsh judgments about myself, or I can take the judgments of other people and put them on myself.
Right.
And we're pretty good with both of those, because the judgments that we have about ourselves generally come from the judgments that we have perceived our parents and our caregivers have had of us.
Yep.
So they come from very young age. And it's what we do is we create this internal tape in our head, and we record everything. And by the time we're 10, 12 years old, we've got thousands of hours of this tape in our head. And then what we do is, if we're not aware of it, we keep running that tape for the rest of our lives.
Yep. Yep.
And we're not even aware that it's not our own voice, but it's somebody else's voice. And then, nobody needs to tell us that we're not good enough. We already know.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of people, like I speak to a lot of mindset coaches, and they all say, we're running on the same operating system that we were born with. But we should actually start upgrading that operating system every now and again.
Absolutely. And we can. Yeah. The belief that the brain is completely fixed and that we're only losing brain cells, which is how I grew up. You don't need to learn another language after the age of 18 because, you can't.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I've learned 3 languages after the age of 18 and it's still working. We can. The brain is totally plastic. We can learn so many different things. And in fact, the more flexible we are, the better it is for us, because it proofs us against all sorts of illness and diseases in old age, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and all of those things.
Yep, absolutely. And so in terms of judgment, do you think it's because social media is at such scale and there's such a mass audience that the judgment factor is so powerful, even more powerful than, standing up and talking to a few people, in a room, or public speaking or whatever else? Because a lot of people say public speaking is one of the most feared exercises for everybody, but social media is also extremely powerful because the audience and the scale is so large. Judgment probably plays a huge factor in that as well.
Well, it is basically public speaking on a really large scale. I mean, you put something out there, whether it's a video or a photo or a post, doesn't matter. I mean, it's you on a platter.
It is.
And then people
on a platter. I like the way you put that.
People feel that they have the right to judge you.
Yep.
Because you're out there, so you should be able to take it. Yep. And my sense is always, when I am mean to somebody else, then I know what that does, because we are really good at feeling what somebody else is feeling.
Yeah.
So if I don't want to do that, I don't want to inflict that on myself or have somebody inflict that on myself, I'm going to hold back.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to hide behind a persona or whatever it might be.
Yep.
But it's about the courage to stand up and say, this is authentically me.
Yep.
Warts and all, take it or leave it.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about dropping all the boundaries. I'm not talking about going all out there. But it's about saying, you don't have to like me. But what I'm posting is something that works for me, and that's good enough. And again, saying that boundaries are really important. And I think that's a topic that we could talk about that for the next 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, let's expand just a little bit on that. And then I want to come back to something you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Let's chat about boundaries. I mean, how does that play a part in this?
Well, sharing information that may not be useful for other people to know.
Right.
I mean, people are now walking around with their cameras everywhere, like into the most intimate. And let me put it this way. I don't mind knowing people, but there are certain things I think should really stay in the realm of privacy.
Yeah. Like you don't always want to air out your dirty laundry to the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, conversations. I mean, people rant in public. Yep. They badmouth people.
Yep.
And if you don't want that to be done to you, don't do it to others.
Absolutely. Totally
because
agree.
It just opens the door.
Yep. Totally agree. And and another thing you mentioned was authenticity. And I mean, that's a word that's thrown around a lot these days, a bit cliched, but usually cliches are there for a reason, because it's so true that, in particular on social media, people respond to who you are, who you really are. People they engage and they build a relationship with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Who's the person behind the brand? They don't just want to have the polish; they want to have the cracks.
Absolutely.
I think it's great to be able to expose yourself, but again, with boundaries and staying within your realm of expertise, and showing people who you are, and then that, being a bit vulnerable on social media.
Totally. And not being perfect. But
Yeah.
again, you have all these influencers who spend 3 hours in hair and makeup before they go and do an authentic shoot on lounging on the sofa or, going out and having fun. And there's nothing authentic about somebody who's airbrushed to an inch of their life.
Right. Their tracksuit's been ironed. Their shoes have been totally clean, squeaking white.
Absolutely.
Hair's done perfect.
Yes.
They out from the gym,
And they speak completely fluently because they have practiced it 50 times.
Exactly.
So now, thankfully, that's changing. There are a lot of people out there who are doing, and that's, I think, the stories really help when people have, stories that show up for a little while and then disappear.
Yep.
I think that takes away the fear because, or to some degree, because it means I can now show up for 24 hours, and if it doesn't work, well, then it's going to go away.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Good point, actually, because it's temporary. It's not there forever.
Yeah. So people are a little bit more spontaneous, but then you can put all these filters on. I mean, I love people who have these filters on with either animal faces or with stars falling down or anything like that. Again, it's persona. It's not necessarily, it's a performance. It's not really being me. It's not really showing who I am. I'm already showing like a beautified version of me.
Exactly. And also putting all these little masks and effects on are also hiding you from revealing your true self as well, 100%, exactly. Because it allows you to hide behind those effects. So it's another reason why they've probably taken off.
Yeah.
So really it all boils down to judgment and confidence and not caring what other people say or think.
Yes. And again, it's always, I mean, I would always say not caring what other people think doesn't mean that you have to give them the finger.
Yes.
No, and again, and showing things where you know that you're going to be hurting people, or that it's going to be, there are people in the world who, in very high positions who are very good at insulting people on a regular basis.
Yep.
My standard is always, is my goal to incite people to create an emotional response no matter what? Or do I want to share something that is meaningful and that hopefully creates respect?
Perfect. And, that's a really good point. When I put out stuff on social media, I am very welcoming of any feedback I get, positive or negative, because, and a couple of points on that. Like a lot of people would probably run, and if they get a negative comment, they'll try and delete it straight away. I'm of the philosophy that no, leave everything up there. You don't actually have to engage in a response if you don't want to, but you can leave it up there, and it allows me also to reflect on what that person said. And I might say, is there any truth in that? Maybe. If there is some truth, maybe I can change and grow myself in a way. And if there isn't, let it be. And I just ignore it. So for me, everything's a learning curve, and it's good to get feedback, positive or negative, because it allows you to really take stock of what you're doing and get out in front of your own ego as well.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I would say, yes, keep feedback. I mean, for me, there's no positive or negative feedback. Feedback is feedback.
Yep, agree. Yep.
But when it's a personal attack.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And when it's something that's hate mongering or fear mongering or ad hominem, like a real personal attack, like, it's not about the person's behavior, but about who they are.
Yeah, no, that's like your hair today. Your hair looks like it's been stuck on today. Something ridiculous like that.
Then I can live with that. I mean, somebody says your hair looks like it's stuck on. I go, that's okay. I'm having a bad hair day. But when somebody says, and I've had that, right. I did one article that was a bit controversial on LinkedIn, and I had people literally come back and saying, you're a fucking idiot.
Oh my God.
You have no idea what you're talking about. And I mean, I initially wanted to start a conversation about it. And I realized these people didn't want to have a conversation. They just wanted to have a rant.
Yep. They're expressing their own insecurity as well.
Absolutely. And so if they have one comment like that, I'm okay with that. Right. But if they don't stop and they keep going, I mean, there's some people who just start commenting on every post, no matter what it is. Yep. That's when I stop and I say, and I have blocked people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. When you have serial offenders that are just being, taking ridiculous lengths to try and, ruin your reputation for no reason at all, then
absolutely. Yeah. It's like stalking.
Yeah, stalking,
You
yeah.
know,
Cyber
it's
stalking.
not good for anybody's health.
I agree. But I suppose a good point is always to, for people is to always take stock of any feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Try and
Absolutely.
learn something from it. And if you realize that it's really someone, that's not contributing anything positive, just get rid of it. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I want to kind of take the conversation in one extra step further now. And
Mhm.
I mean, if we're talking about, staying in your comfort zone, and the tendency to stay in your comfort zone and not grow and not evolve and not push yourself out of your comfort zone, what are the implications, the real implications of not doing that, of not evolving and not adapting in life?
Or you just have to look at the world at the moment, don't you?
Good point.
I mean, we are not really, I mean, I talk to people and they say, I just want to get back to normal.
Yeah.
Well, this is an opportunity to evolve. We have never had a better opportunity to say,
That's right.
is the level of consciousness that we're operating from really that useful for us?
Yes.
Oh, no, it's all good. Let's just go back to the way it was before. Is the economic system really working for us? No, let's just go back to the way it was before.
Yep.
It's better the devil I know.
Yep. And a perfect example, as trivial as it is no, I'm going to only buy one pack of toilet paper and I'm going to leave the other one for my fellow earth dweller.
Yes, I have to say that one of my biggest accomplishments during this crisis is that I never bought into that. I bought a pack of toilet paper at the beginning of the year, and I bought my second pack in June.
Fantastic. Well done. But again,
I refused to. I was like, there was no way they're going to stop producing toilet paper. So
I mean, people have just lost the plot to a degree, but it's a good example of human behavior and human psychology, and how and what the effects are if we don't take self-awareness into account and we don't try and evolve and change our behavior for the better, because nobody wins.
No, and for me, it's really important that, and this is why I do the push myself out of the comfort zone, and I do some really big things, like literally, like big things. But
what were some of the biggest things you've done for you?
I was petrified of horses.
Oh wow!
Getting on a horse.
Okay.
So and flying.
Wow.
So that's I wanted to do skydiving. I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But what I've started doing is I've started doing indoor skydiving.
Okay, how cool! I didn't even know there was such a thing.
It's fabulous. I'm going again on Saturday.
Oh wow! Is that where you go above the air and you just it's almost a practice run?
Yeah, and that's fun. And then the next step is just to jump out of a plane.
Oh,
but my point is, it's the little things that really matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to people and and if we want to proof ourselves against going into crisis mode again, where we panic and where we're doing all of these things, I generally suggest to people, vary your daily routine.
Yes.
People are completely driven by going on automatic. Yeah. They get up at the same time. They have the same routine in the morning. Put on the coffee, go have a shower, have the coffee, get dressed, go to work on the same train, the same bus, the same route in the car, sit down,
seat in the train, the same door, everything.
Exactly. And then, the lunchtime exactly the same way, go home for dinner, sit in the same seat for dinner, watch the same TV shows, sleep on the same side of the bed, there's no variation. And if any of those things fall over, the whole day collapses.
And that's actually a really good point. I never really thought of that, if we start shaking up our daily routine, it preps us in a way to change our behavior in many other aspects of our life. Yeah. Whereas if we don't, we're just too caught up with our mindset of routine and not going out of our comfort zone. That's actually a really good point.
The brain is very, very plastic. But when we create habits, the brain loves it because it needs very little energy to maintain those habits.
Interesting.
So the more habits I have, the less energy the brain needs. So if I learn something new, my whole brain will light up, and billions of little neurons will start communicating. Oh, yeah. But as soon as I've identified a pattern, I've done something several times, the brain will go, I know this, we've done this before. Okay, here we go again. And what it does, it reduces the effort, and it creates what used to be like little pathways, like mud paths, now become super highways.
Yep.
Gotcha. And so the connection is really, really quick. And so that means I don't have to focus on anything. I can go on automatic, which is fabulous if you want to keep going every day. But if anything unforeseen happens, the brain goes, "Oh," it literally makes us less flexible and almost less intelligent.
Right. Because
So
obviously, you know, the human body and the brain obviously want to conserve energy and you know, take us avoid fight flight mechanisms.
absolutely, yeah.
But then obviously by doing this, we're forcing ourselves to go into those temporary states, but then maybe the benefits after are astounding.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm running on automatic all day long and I'm using the same vocabulary every day and I'm using my body the same way, my body starts literally becoming a very, very small container. And I want to step out of that, and it's going to become really uncomfortable. But what it also, so if now, let's say I drive to work and there's a construction site and there's a detour, people literally freak.
Wow.
You know, they arrive at work in a totally flustered state, and all of a sudden the day has gone to pot.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
that's, and if, since we're talking about social media, if I go on social media and I have to be spontaneous and in the moment and I haven't practiced it and whatever it might be, that's going to create a lot of anxiety.
Yep. Yep.
And then there's the judgment on top of that. And then there's the self-talk. And who am I? Oh my God, I've got no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And how will people judge me? And
can
then
we,
I want to stay
is
away.
this going to be live or can we edit it? And you know, what can I do? And the biggest thing now is video.
Yeah.
Everybody's so scared to get in front of the camera, you know, and I can understand why. Everybody's got their issues and whatnot, you know, we all do. But, you know, what's your take on, what have you learned working with people of late in your work and how they respond to video?
Well, maybe I'll start with myself, because in one of my past incarnations, I was a TV producer.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And I was in charge of studio guests.
Okay.
So I would always be the one who would prepare studio guests who often had never been on TV before. And I would be the one who said, okay, so this is where the cameras are and this is where you sit. And people would just freak.
Yep.
And I was actually invited to be on one of those shows, and I freaked. So
Yep.
I know exactly what it feels like.
Yeah, sure.
So it's that I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know what I look like. I look different when I look at myself in the mirror.
I've lost the illusion of control. I'll especially put that in inverted commas, illusion of control.
Absolutely. And again, my self-image of myself is not necessarily reflected on that camera.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, I mean, when I look at myself in the mirror, I look different.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, so when I see myself on camera, it's unfamiliar.
Yep.
There are very few people who like the sound of their own voice.
Yeah, so true. And me being a photographer, I get this all the time. The first thing that people say, make me look slimmer, make me look this, make me look that. Are you going to Photoshop? I said, oh yes, I'm going to do all of that. Relax. Everybody's obsessed with their image and how to reflect or portray to the world the image that they have of themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So video is scary, especially live.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I remember when we first talked about doing this, and I said, great, let's do this. And you said, let's do a live. And my first response was live. And then I went, of course, we need to do this live, because if we don't, we're not really walking our talk.
That's right. 100%.
If we're recording this.
Yep. 100%. And I was never a great orator, speaker, person in front of the camera, but you know, I've just trained myself over the time and I get better all the time. And if I go back to my first episodes, they're terrible, but that's cool. You know, it almost has it's a great reservoir documentary of the process as well, that I can always go back to and say, wow, look, I did that from episode 1 to episode 76.
Exactly. And one of my teachers used to say that it's really important to keep those up on social media as well, so that it's not just us who sees the progress, but other people can see that as well. It humanizes us. It says, you know, you weren't always that, see, and I can't even find the words. I was going to say, you're not even that polished all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And by the same token, what we mentioned before, like, I actually like it when things aren't that polished all the time. You can reveal your cracks. You can reveal who you are as a person, how you think, the nuances to your personality. And that's what people fall in love with, more so than just a perfect execution, Hollywood style, you know? It doesn't work.
Yeah, I know. Oh, there's some beautiful things out there, you know, and I totally get it. But I really think we need to stay human, because we're creating an expectation, especially for the younger generation, that creates such low self-esteem.
Yep.
We already have a really high suicide rate. We already have depression and anxiety and all of that. And the more we can support people in showing up just the way they are, and again, with boundaries, you don't need to show people your bedroom.
Sure. Yeah. 100%.
You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. Or, or your whatever, your garage, what's the point? What's the relevance to this?
Yeah. Again, I mean,
relevance is a good one.
It's like sometimes I think people forget that, when you invite somebody into your house, you don't take them immediately into your bedroom, sit on the bed and tell them what you've had for lunch. What's going on in your life right now, and the drama you've had because you or whatever it might be.
Oh my God, yeah, too much.
So it's too much information.
Yeah,
but on social media,
first give me entree, then main course, then maybe dessert. But just slow it down.
Still, there are certain rooms that are out of bounds.
Totally agree more. So I mean, obviously we've established that judgment, fear of judgment, and lack of confidence and whatever is really an issue these days.
Yes.
And I can understand why, but what can people do to start rectifying that? And I kind of want to get into the realm of what you do in your work and how you work with people to really allow them and take them in a different direction and help them on their journey.
So the most important thing is to notice what beliefs you're running in the background. And as I mentioned before, we've got this inner voice in our head. Write down the things you say to yourself.
Right, I like it.
And also listen to the voice and find out if it's actually your own voice or if it's somebody else's voice.
Yeah.
Because we have so many voices in our heads. I mean, I know that there was a time where I would say, "Thanks, Mom." That's great that you have that.
Really?
I
like it. That's a good one.
So it's not about pushing it away and going, "I don't want to know about this." It's about saying, okay, so what's the intent behind that? Yeah. What does this voice want to tell me right now? Yes. And then maybe find a different way of fulfilling that. My mother always wanted to make sure that I was safe.
Yep.
So how else can I be safe? I know this sounds a little bit staged, but again, it's once you do this on a regular basis, it becomes automatic, and it's the realization of I'm going down that path again. Really don't want to go there.
Perfect. It's really about, first of all, understanding and gaining a self-awareness about your inner dialogue and what you're actually telling yourself.
Yes.
And where those thoughts are coming from, and are they actually useful or are they not useful?
Yes. Yeah. And then the other thing that I always say to people, you have more resources, you have more skills than you think you do.
Right. Yeah.
When you are afraid in this situation, you also have lots of examples that totally offset that.
True. And this period is a perfect example of that. The amount of adaptation and evolution that people have gone through in this period has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
They found resources that they never knew they had.
Yes, exactly. So it's about thinking back to, and make a list. And what I always invite people to do is not just make a list, but feel what it feels like. Mm-hmm. So when you remember a time when you were really confident, really feel that. And I'd sometimes do that when I run courses. I used to run courses in how to manage stage fright, ironically, after I'd overcome mine.
Wow.
But I used to say to people, okay, so feel what it feels like to be really confident. And you can do that by remembering, you can do it by imagining, or you can do it by pretending. And if you really don't know how it works, you can borrow it from somebody else. So this is how we learned as children.
So true. And you know what? Funny you should mention that. I was actually listening to a fantastic episode of the Tim Ferriss podcast this morning. Mm-hmm. I was interviewing Hugh Jackman.
Oh, yes. I saw that. It's on my list.
Oh, it is a sensational interview.
I'm sure.
Hugh Jackman is phenomenally spiritual and self-aware and practices meditation and mindfulness, and his mindset is incredible. One of the things that he said is that he learned many years ago, he learned from somebody else, and I can't remember the actual quote, but he said, when he's about to do something, and I've heard this before, he envisions it being over and being really, and have it being succeeded incredibly well. And then he walks into it with a different mindset than if you say, oh my God, I hope this is going to be okay.
Yes. That's exactly, that was going to be my third tool. Okay. So the second tool was imagine what it feels like, or pretend or borrow or remember. So the important thing is that you put yourself into the body posture.
Yeah.
Because if I say to you, okay, Darren, I remember a time when I was really confident.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, that doesn't show me that.
Yeah, like I'm telling myself I'm really not. My body will immediately recognize that. So putting my shoulders down, my chin up and all of that will really make a difference already. Standing up, walking around.
Yep. And a lot of people say the power pose is the Superman or Superwoman pose is a good one.
Well, just by lifting your arms and doing a yay, you're creating dopamine in your brain. So that's the reward chemical that says, yes, I've done it.
Love it. Yep.
So keep practicing that. But the tool that Hugh Jackman talked about is also known as future pacing.
Oh, yes.
So what we often do is we go into a situation and we imagine that we're in that situation. But because the brain is so wired for negativity, because that's what keeps us safe, what could go wrong, what could go, my God, this is dangerous, I better stay out of this. Yep. So what we do is we take all of that back into the current situation, then we run this back and forth several times, and we've created an expectation because the brain goes, oh, this is where you want to go. Great, I'll take you there.
Okay, so in other words, you're forcing your brain to change the pattern.
Yes.
And envision a positive outcome, and then your brain says, all right, I'll take you there.
But the thing is, often what people do is they imagine that they're doing really, really well while they're doing it. And that's the trick, because I don't know about you, but I have given presentations where the fire alarm went off in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I continued my presentation in the car park.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not kidding.
What a great one. What a story.
So, I mean, so if I had practiced my presentation on it's going perfectly, that would have thrown me completely, because that is an obstacle my brain would not have anticipated.
Gotcha.
But the tool that Hugh Jackman also talks about is you imagine you've already done it.
I love it. It's done. It's over. It's gone successfully well. So whatever happened in the meantime, whatever
doesn't matter.
On a tangent, doesn't matter. You handled it. It went perfectly.
Yes.
And that gives you that confidence and that ability to execute with such flair.
Because the brain goes, oh, that's just a speed bump, because I know what's going to happen next. So I can get over that quite easily.
I love it. I love it. Because your brain is prepped for that.
Yes. Yep. So keep doing that. Keep running. I've done it really well. By the way, I mean, this is really important. It doesn't mean that you stop preparing. You've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to know what you're doing.
A great point. And I always say this, whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is, whether it's small or large, or how trivial you might think it is, prepare, because even the process of preparation will give you a certain confidence and mindset that will allow you to succeed, even if you don't draw on anything you prepared. Just the fact that you've prepared, it sets a standard in your brain, in your state of mind, that allows you to reach that level of success, I suppose.
Yeah, you got to know what you're talking about.
Yep.
I mean, you can't just see, for the brain, it's really important. Predictability is absolutely key for the brain. If I've done something before, then my brain can relax and it can focus on what really matters. But if I don't know what I'm doing, and if there are too many variables, what happens is my brain starts getting really anxious, and it starts looking, it literally loses the plot. It goes, what else should I be noticing? Where else should I be going? Yep. And that's when we go into overwhelm, because we can only focus on one or two things at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's when we get into this, and then we think we're being judged, and all of that happens at the same time. Yep. And then, yes.
Absolutely. And for me, I suppose another thing that really works for me is that, like, experience is a big thing for the brain, I think. The more you've thrown yourself out of your comfort zone on numerous occasions, like setting yourself a challenge every year, a different one, after so many years of setting yourself a challenge, executing on that challenge, and coming to the next year, your brain almost gets used to knowing that whatever you do, it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
You kind of get used to that, and then you can start feeling a bit more comfortable throwing yourself in situations where you're not comfortable, and just know that, it'll be fine. It's happened. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. It's always been fine. So don't worry about it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're prepping your brain for that as well. So all these things, I suppose, play a part in that. Yeah. Fantastic. So tell us, Angela, more about exactly what you do and who you work with, and all. I'd love to know a bit more about how that works.
Okay. So I work, as you may have guessed, I love emotions. So for me, there's no positive or negative emotion. It's just one that feels pleasant or unpleasant. And it's helping people to just appreciate every emotion there is. And I've had my family, my background is one of those typical dysfunctional ones. You know how they define a family these days. And a dysfunctional family is any family with more than one member. So I've had one of those typical upbringings, and I decided that when I grew up that I didn't really want to pass this on to the next generation, because I had identified family patterns that went back literally 4 generations.
Wow.
And I said, I'm not doing that. And and people in my family were medicating emotions. They were pushing emotions down. They were exploding. They were doing all sorts of ways. And so I developed a toolkit that has all of those skills that we often don't learn when we grow up. Again, how to set boundaries, how to take care of our own needs, how to pay attention, how to have empathy for someone without going into judgment, how to manage difficult conversations. A lot of people run away when there's a challenge. And I think these kind of conversations I used to be petrified of. Anybody looked at me the wrong way and I would go, okay, I'm out of here. Whereas now I get really curious and I say, so what's going on? Can we have a chat about that? Because I think it's a fabulous opportunity to actually create more trust in the relationship.
Absolutely. And learn and grow through it.
Yes. And so I've created a whole, what I call the 11 practices of emotional productivity. And so my courses are all based on those. So I've got leadership courses, and I run, personal development courses, and I do one-on-one coaching with people who are, either in corporate land or who want to do some personal development privately.
Okay. Are you doing this overseas as well, globally, being that you've come from 9 different countries?
Yes, I do. I do a lot of work. I lived out of a suitcase for 4 years because I was traveling so much that there was no point having an apartment or a house. So now what I've done is I'm turning all my work into online work.
Yep. Fantastic. Great. And
so
the technology is there.
I'm working on all of that.
That's amazing. And people can do a lot of online pre-recorded stuff as well as online real time courses.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome.
And it's all work in progress. But this is why I'm really grateful for the coronavirus crisis, because it's really put the turbo in.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's forced me to do all sorts of things. And, I think for everybody, as I mentioned, like I'm from a human behavior point of view, it's been fascinating to see how quickly and how well people have adapted in a lot of respects, and people have drawn on resources and inner strengths that they never thought they had.
Yeah.
So it's quite phenomenal, really.
Yes.
From that point
Which is why I say, just go for it.
Yep, go for it.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. If it works, yay.
Perfect. And I can use the same philosophy for social media. Just post it. If it doesn't do well, big deal. The world's not going to end.
Exactly.
Post something else tomorrow. Big deal.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
What you post, you can stand behind.
Yep.
Not because you're pleasing somebody or because you're afraid, but because you go, yep, this is me. I stand behind that post. And again, do it with the intent of respect and not of creating whatever response you want to create.
Absolutely.
And educate people as well.
Definitely. I mean, and really good point on that. Like a lot of people fall into the trap of seeing what content does really well and then just doing more of it, and they're kind of pandering to their audience.
Yeah.
But but it might not be what they want to put out. So if you have some messages in you and things that you want to share with the world, put them out anyway.
Yeah. And
eventually you'll find your audience, you'll find your tribe, you'll build your community.
Yes.
Don't always just pander to, that this type of thing will get you 100,000 likes and 100 comments, but it's not really going to take you from A to B. It's going to leave you where you are at A, because everybody still expects the same thing all the time. So, do that's again, coming back to authenticity. Do what you really feel like you need to do and what's in you that you want to express.
Yeah. And if it's something where you feel that you want to separate out the personal from the professional, you always have the option to create a group for close friends, and you post things that are meaningful for them. So you invite those people into the living room, whereas some people you just meet with at the pub, and those are the public posts.
I love it. You invite some people to the living room, and the others you just leave in the car park.
Yeah.
I love it. You leave them on the porch.
Yes. And that's your public group, and again, there's so many options, and it's about just knowing what you want to create in the world.
Yeah, so true. And that's what gives you the confidence and the great feeling that what you've done is achieving something. And that's what happiness ultimately is. It's the progressive achievement of a goal. It's the journey.
Yes.
It's not about what happens at the end, how many likes you got, how many posts you got. For me, like putting out my content every day, getting up early in the morning, because I get up at 5 o'clock like a madman. And I'm, that's when I'm very creative, and I have my coffee and I'm just doing all my stuff. And I just love that journey. And then I might not even look at it for a couple of hours. I don't even care if it's done well or not. I just had fun because that was what I wanted to do today.
You know what? When I put my posts out, and I know that some of these don't get I don't have a lot of followers in that sense, but the people who are engaging with me, that's what really matters, because they comment in a way that encourages me to post more. I get private messages from people all the time saying, thank you, I really needed to hear that today.
Fantastic. I love that.
And that means more to me than thousands of likes.
Absolutely. If you can change one person's world with that post, it's so much more powerful than having a million people just saying, yeah, like, nice.
Yeah.
You can really make a difference. And, again, like social media and everything in general is not about pleasing everybody. You can't please everybody. It's about pleasing your small community, and you build and grow your community or a tribe, that are on the same wavelength as you over time, and that's slow and steady process. And that's good. We can't try and aim for pleasing the world, because then we're going to put out generic content that doesn't really apply to everybody else.
Absolutely. Which also leads me to my maybe final point. Sure. You don't have to accept every friend request that's being sent to you.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Like I generally accept friend requests from people who already have people in my network. Yeah. So they are mutual connections. My experience is sometimes when I accept people into the network, I don't know anything about. They are the ones who are least aligned in values, and who are the ones who make really funny comments, or who become really inappropriate, or whatever it might be. Whereas when there's already a connection there, it fits in, and there's often an expanded community, because people go, yes, and you, and oh yes, and so then people comment about, like, I just connected a friend through a friend who shared something from me, and a friend of hers in Switzerland commented on that. Right. So now this guy in Switzerland and I are having conversations, and he's a lovely guy. And now we're talking to his friend in Adelaide. So we're going to have a 3-way Zoom call the next, it's just.
Brilliant. Absolutely. There's an inherent trust in that. And I do the same. Like, I try and, if I reach out for connections, I usually reach out for connections with mutual other contacts rather than just random. Yeah.
And if they don't have anything, I look at their interests. I look at whatever posts they've got available. And if there's absolutely nothing, there's no cover photo or anything of that sort that tells me who they are, I pass.
Yep. Yeah, very good advice. Very true. Now, I kind of want to dive a little deeper here, because I know I myself and the audience loves stories. And that's actually a good lead into social media as well. People love stories. People love storytelling. People love, real life examples of things.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear about how you, maybe a case study or two from your own practice of how you've helped someone on their journey, and show us the progress from A to Z.
Okay. I have been a coach for 25 years, so there's one or two stories. But if we're going to stage fright, let's sure. maybe have a story about that.
Great.
I used to teach courses at Sydney University Center for Continuing Education on stage fright. Right. And I often had people I literally had people who would walk in and then turn around and walk out again. Wow. Yeah. They wouldn't even last coming into a course about that.
They came in, they saw 20 people, they said, too many, I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the class was limited to 20 people, literally.
There you go.
So no, couldn't do that. I worked with a lot of singers and actors and musicians.
Wow.
I was married to my ex-husband was an opera singer.
Okay, wow.
And so I ended up working with a lot of his colleagues, and it just spread around. Yeah. And there were people I was working with one woman who would literally throw up every time before she went on stage.
Oh, wow.
She was petrified of going on. She was a brilliant singer. Oh. So when she was giving like small little concerts, no problem whatsoever. As soon as there were people in the audience that went beyond 5, she couldn't do it.
Terrible.
So we did quite a bit of work together, and she was a student at the Conservatorium of Music. And when she had her final exam, and I was in the audience because, I was, rooting for her.
Exactly.
She came off stage and she sang beautifully, like absolutely brilliantly. She came off and she said to me, that was just like going to a tea party and talking to friends.
Wow.
And she was absolutely thrilled, and she passed with flying colors because she was having fun. She was no longer afraid of, oh my God, how am I being perceived? Even though it was an exam, she was there because she wanted to have fun. Now, this is a woman who now runs a singing school, and every now and then we just have a little chat about things, and because she's taken the tools that I've taught her and she now uses them with her students, and she says they make a really big difference. And I go, yes, I really love that.
Fantastic. And so what did you actually go through with her to get her to that point? The 3 steps that you mentioned earlier, or?
Lots of stuff. I do a lot of belief change work as well, where I look with people also, where do these beliefs come from, and where I have processes where people can literally change their beliefs about that. So we go back into history. I don't do archaeological digs. So just so we're really clear, I always say we're not excavating bones. I'm not interested in that. I don't want to explore the relationship you had with your father or with your mother for the next 3 years.
You don't need to uncover any fossils.
No, but if a bone sticks up, we'll have a look at that.
Right.
And there are very simple tools that you can use where you don't even have to go back into a traumatic situation, where you can just say, you know what, let's just disable this, neutralize it.
Yeah.
And then when that is no longer running in the background, it creates a lot of space.
Yeah. And out of interest, at the same time, did you run her through exercises where you kind of desensitized herself live, one by one, with more and more people, or it was all mindset?
No, mindset.
All mindset.
What I do is, as I said, if I say to somebody, remember, imagine, pretend, or borrow, what it's like to really feel what somebody else is feeling, or what you were feeling at a certain time, or if you were feeling it right now, and if you keep piling them up on top of each other and you combine them with a gesture or with a movement that you can use at times when you really need it, you rewire your brain. And all of a sudden, instead of going this way, your brain goes that way.
Gotcha.
But people come and they go, oh, I'm going to have 1 or 2 sessions with you. And I say, that's great. I'm always happy to do that. The thing that I expect is that you practice in between, because the practice happens through the rewiring, and that requires lots and lots of repetitions. So then people come back and they say, it doesn't work. And I say, well, how many times have you practiced? Well, I stood on stage the other day and I did what you told me to do. And I said, yes, but how many times did you practice before you went on stage? And they went, not. We did it in the session. And I was like, yeah, well, that's the thing. The actual training, the actual rewiring happens between the sessions. That's your responsibility. There's nothing I can do about that. Unless you want me to be with you 24/7 and I stand next to you and say, now remember to do this and let's imagine how to do that, then it's not gonna work. That's your brain. You're in charge of your own brain. I can only provide you with the tools and then you make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so true. Like even when it comes to social media, it's the same thing. A lot of people get excited. They come up, I help them with the strategy, but then they fall short on the execution. Yeah. It's the same thing with everything I see. People don't want to actually do the work day in, day out to get them to that point.
Yeah. And we now live in times where people promise extremely fast results. Yeah. You attend a 2-day course and you become a master.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not that. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about that. And he talks about the fact that people need about 10,000 hours of experience before they really are so hardwired that they're an expert and they can do things. And I know that, for the first few years, I was studying like crazy. And I worked on myself first before I worked with anybody else.
Wow.
I worked on myself for a very long time.
Yep. Absolutely. And again, like that's something that really hits home with me. You've got to do the reps.
Yeah.
You've got to put in the reps. You can't become an Olympic swimmer just practicing once a month. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen.
Exactly. I mean, I work with people who literally sit in front of me and say, I'm ready to be promoted into the next role. Yeah. Okay, so how long have you been in this job? Or 6 months? Right. So you know exactly how this works. Yes. So what I say to people is very simply, just write me a job description of the next level that you're aiming for. and then give that to your boss and ask them to fill in the blanks.
Right. Yeah.
And there are a lot of blanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the flip side of stage fright. It's that overconfidence.
Yes.
And it's about finding that middle ground. It's about, and I've worked with a lot of people, where, I mean, literally people saying, I'm entitled to this and I should be doing this.
Yep.
And they were very surprised when I said to them, an apprenticeship generally takes 3 years, because the brain, again, works on repetition. Once is accident, twice is coincidence, 3 times is the beginning of a pattern.
I like it. Nice.
So when I go through 1 year, my brain goes, okay, that is something that happened. The second year, it goes, I think we had that last year. And the third year, it goes, right, I remember now. And then that's when it creates that. So the same thing goes with expertise. You have to actually do that. And the same thing happens with mistakes. You have to make a mistake a few times before you realize what doesn't work.
Oh, that's interesting. I like it. So even, yeah, absolutely. So you have to repeat the same mistakes a few times for you to really realize the power of those mistakes and the fact that and then work out how to change them.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
So when people say to me, oh, I made a mistake, I go, great, excellent. Because the moment you recognize that it's a mistake, you have an opportunity to change it. I can't change what I haven't identified as a mistake.
Gotcha.
But as soon as I know better and I go, like, I don't know, whatever it might be, like riding a bicycle and taking my feet off the pedals and falling over, if I do that once and I go, well, that didn't work. And then I keep doing it and wonder, I mean, this is the whole thing of, you keep doing the same thing over and over again and, hoping for a different result. That's not the same. But again, when you notice you're making a mistake, pat yourself on the shoulder and go, yes, I'm learning.
I love it. And that kind of makes me feel good, because I used to always remember that saying, I'll never make the same mistake twice. It's actually it's not really true. You just need to make it more than once to really start to rectify the behavior.
We generally make the same mistake 6 to 9 times.
There you go. Wow, it makes me feel
Which is why it's so important to keep going.
Yep. I love it.
Not just do it once and going, well, that doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do that again. It's about doing it and persisting. Yep. I always say, if something feels uncomfortable, it's because it is. Your brain is not used to it. It hasn't created any kind of positive emotional connection to that. Right. And it's not a positive emotion. It's just, I'm feeling good about what I'm doing. It's just weird. Right. It's like when you go down the bunny rabbit hill, when you're skiing, that's easy. But when you're going up the hill further up and only a few people have gone down the hill and you're going down the first time, well, you got to go back a few more times before you can actually say, I know how to ski. Yep,
so true. And in general, I mean, what are the benefits for the brain to keep stretching it? Is it just, it keeps it being elastic? Does it stave away issues later on? Like, yes. What does it do to keep stretching the brain?
It allows us to deal with any kind of unexpected changes. Again, like maybe not to the degree of pandemic immediately. You might have to actually practice that a little bit more. Yeah. But if you keep doing different things all the time, when the brain atrophies, yep. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies.
Yep, gotcha.
And if you don't, and if you add on top of that, you never reward yourself. You never get that sense of, yes, I've done it. I've stretched and I've made this work. So you don't create those dopamine responses. The only dopamine responses, if you create those through gaming, yep. Or any kind of other really funky
food stuff, or through whatever else,
or food, whatever, yeah. That's not going to really work. But if you are stretching and you're getting into that sense of, yes, I've really done it, and you're going, yay, creating that dopamine, it keeps the brain healthy.
Great. And then you want more.
Yes, exactly.
Let's do it again. What else can we do? Yeah.
Yes. And that has consequences for long-term health and well-being, because all of those emotions are also connected to the immune system.
Yep, very true. So really, the brain is the source. If you can rewire the brain, yes. Everything else will follow.
And the brain, just so we've got a brain in here, we've got a brain in our heart, and we have a brain in our gut. And you want to work with all 3 of them.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, I think we're going to have to leave that one for another podcast.
Yes. But you will be able to do that when you feel it, when you think about it, and when you have a gut feeling. And the gut feeling you get by practicing and practicing and practicing.
And that's a whole other discussion. What is the gut feeling? Is it?
Oh yeah.
Is it the right feeling? Is it the wrong feeling? I think we'll do another episode where we can talk about.
Sounds good.
Because there's a lot of stuff to uncover there. But Angela, it's been really lovely to have you on the show. It's been an insightful discussion. I've really enjoyed it. And
Thank you,
I hope a lot of people have really got a lot out of it. But I always like to ask my guests to leave us with 1 or 2 tips that we can use and implement straight away after the show. What can we use in our daily life today that can help us on our journey?
On a very, very basic level, breathe.
Breathe.
Anytime you feel anxious, anytime you feel something doesn't work or you're feeling out of sorts, take a deep breath, oxygenize the brain, shake it up, move your body, go for a walk.
And it also limits you from responding without thinking in a way. Like just take a few minutes to process.
Yes. And again, if something happens that's unforeseen, you don't need to react immediately.
Yep.
You know, walk away if need be.
Yep. It's so true. And you know, even in terms of the technology these days in our society, we're also prone now to wanting instant responses.
Yeah.
The phone rings, you have to answer it. The text comes, you have to answer it.
Yeah.
Why? Why can't we say, hold on, take an hour, I'll get to that later on. You know?
Absolutely.
We're
recommend
slaves to all that kind of stuff instead of us being in control.
Yeah, it stops you from making comments on social media, hitting the reply all email, and 10 minutes later going, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in other words, breathe can be definitely a physical exercise, but it's also a metaphoric exercise.
Yes.
Breathe metaphorically, meaning take a minute, take a break before you respond. Just think about things, let it digest, you know.
Yeah.
We move on. Fantastic, Angela. Well, really, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Had a ball, and we'd definitely like to do another show. So if the audience out there wants to hear more about certain topics that we've discussed today, please email us. You can email me, Darren, at suspendedanimation.com.au. And actually, that's a really good point, Angela. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my email address is angela@angelaheise.com, or I have a website if you want to contact me over that. And there's an opportunity for you to book in for a 15-minute chat if you want, or longer.
And you're on LinkedIn as well, which I'll put all those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
And being that we're talking about social media, I'm going to have a shameless plug for myself. I rarely do this, but I'm going to do it today. Is that anybody out there, I'm holding a very, very, very affordable 2-hour intensive webinar or Q&A on Saturday, this Saturday, the 4th of July, from 10 till 12 p.m., all on Zoom from the comfort of your own home. I really want to answer lots of questions about social media and podcasting. So bring your questions, and you're going to learn from everybody else's questions as much as you'll learn from your own. So if you want to jump on that, feel free to look at the links on my LinkedIn or on my Facebook page and book in for that as well. But Angela, thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for everybody out there, have a fantastic day. We hope we've inspired you to get active and engage more with social media. Get in front of the camera, play, have fun, and as we discussed, visualize the outcome as a success. That's going to help you on your journey to actually execute every day. So everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you very, very soon for another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast.